My name is Kayla Spelling. I'm a Kentucky girl with wild hair and green eyes who's not just a photographer and videographer, but a midnight designer too. I'm a visual storyteller with a creative spirit that knows no bounds. As a creative junkie and Aquarian sun, my love for all things creative runs deep. Being a visual storyteller for over a decade has allowed me to work with some seriously impressive clients across all spectrums, fueling my desire to learn and explore how people experience the world. What do they have in common? They all live and breathe their passions. So, inspired by their experiences, I launched a podcast to hear theirs and other stories on how they broke the 9-to-5 mold and pursued their true purpose in life. My goal is to empower listeners with knowledge and inspire them to live their most authentic and fulfilling life by following their passions. Join me on a journey where we'll explore spiritualism, consciousness, writing, culinary arts, tattooing, music, travel, media, and so much more. As an Aquarius, I know that I'm full of surprises, but one thing's for sure. We're in for a crazy journey into this world of creative junk. Hello, my creative junkies. Brace yourself for an inspiring journey as we delve into captivating conversations with extraordinary individuals who are wholeheartedly living their passions. Today's episode holds a special place in my heart, and I can't wait to share it with you. Originally, today's episode was supposed to be an interview with a dear friend and former client of mine, Tracey DuEst. Tracey founded the nonprofit organization HeartWings, which provided various in-person and online services aimed at self-awareness, personal growth, and embracing one's unique gifts and inner guidance. By accepting and loving ourselves completely, we become more capable of forging connections, fostering understanding, and celebrating diversity of humanity. HeartWings empowered individuals with the knowledge, tools, and wisdom needed to create a conscious and love-filled life. Tracey was also one of the driving forces behind the creation of this very podcast. When the idea was just a flickering flame in my mind, held back by fear, she not only encouraged me, but also helped me shape creative junk into reality. Sadly, a month ago, I received the devastating news that Tracey had passed away. She truly was a beacon of light in this world, and her loss has broken my heart. Today's episode is a tribute to her. I will be sharing an interview I had the pleasure of doing earlier this year on her podcast, Heart-Centered Space. During our conversation, we explored the spiritual side of life and how my journey with spiritual healing influenced my creative process. But before we dive into that episode, I would like to take a moment to honor Tracey. With over 2 decades of experience in coaching and advocating for inclusivity and justice, Tracey's unique perspective and personal struggles with mental health allowed her to create a safe space for her clients to delve into their own stories and fears. In Tracey's own words, "Embracing every part of my story, examining subconscious patterns, and embracing my darkest and most vulnerable emotions has allowed my inner light to shine brighter than ever. I fear no emotion, feel a deep sense of wholeness, experience joy and laughter to the fullest, and radiate light from the core of my being. Through extensive healing work and embracing the journey of self-evolution, I have come to see and accept every part of myself just as it is, realizing that we all have aspects that need acceptance, love, and embrace. Always remember, never dim your light for anyone." Now, without further ado, here is the episode Tracey and I recorded for her podcast, Heart-Centered Space. Please bear in mind that the audio quality may not be perfect, but the essence of our conversation is what truly matters. Thank you, Tracey, for being a guiding light and touching the lives of many. We miss you and love you dearly. This episode is dedicated to you.
Welcome to the Heart-Centered Space podcast, a place for us to be open about the most deeply intimate, vulnerable, and transformative parts of our stories to inspire others to do the same. My name is Tracey DuEst, and I'm the founder of HeartWings, whose mission is to create a beloved community by building bridges, creating connections, and embodying love. The podcast is one of many services we provide to the community. The stories people share build bridges and create connections with people worldwide who feel inspired and gain hope and encouragement by listening. You can learn more about our services by visiting heartwings.co. I'm joined today by Kayla Spelling, who I first got to know as my official web designer. Kayla and I have now formed a close friendship, and there are many ways our lived experiences and passions intersect. I'm excited to have her as a guest as we will share her extraordinary journey titled Let's Get Spiritual, and how her experiences led her to ask deeper questions about the meaning of life and why she is here. And yes, as I'm saying, let's get spiritual, we're both shaking our shoulders because we thought of the song, Let's Get Physical. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kayla before we hear her very unique personality and story. Kayla is the founder of Mind Junk Creative, where she creates brands and experiences rooted in visual storytelling. She considers herself a digital nomad who works on a variety of projects such as video editing, social media marketing and design, web and graphic design, and content marketing. She has worked with clients such as Bishop Fox, Abercrombie and Fitch, and Sony Music. With a slightly concerning obsession with tea and Doctor Who, she says David Tennant is her favorite doctor. She makes her home in Belgium with a growing collection of TARDIS and fluffy cats who don't mind her silent film star crush on Buster Keaton. You can find her constantly creating something from a delicious meal to film and editing videos for her horror lovers YouTube channel, Cafe Crashdown. I would also add that Kayla is passionate about astrology, so you might hear astrology language weaved in throughout the show. So Kayla, before we jump in, let's tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are. Tell us a little bit more about your background, what you want listeners to know that's not in your bio.
Yeah, right away you mentioned about the whole astrology thing. So let's start there. I'm an Aquarius sun, Leo rising, and Scorpio moon. So take that to heart, people. It's a fun combination. So yeah, that's my dynamic. Being an Aquarius, wow, you're really going to see the more we talk how many interests I have. I absolutely love learning and just learning about people, learning about experiences, learning about different like job fields and things like that. So I have a lot of different hobbies that I enjoy doing. But one thing that's not in my bio at all that I also do on the side, this is called Let's Get Spiritual. So on the spiritual end of things, I am Reiki certified. So up to Reiki 2. So I do, for those of you who don't know what Reiki is, it's energy healing, focusing, working with the chakras and getting that energy to flow through your body and through your aura. And I'm actually in the process, I'm about to start phase 1 of learning how to use tuning forks. That's going to be a cool new thing to add to my random assortment of things that Kayla can do. So I'm really excited about that. And I've taken some astrology classes. So yeah, I'm super into astrology. So all of that lumped in with just being a creative person and creating awesome content for the world.
And we might get into this later, but it feels like it fits right here since you named a few other things. I wanted to say that I was blessed to have a reading over the weekend. You and I exchanged my coaching with your talents. And so I had a reading, and maybe let listeners know what the heck is a reading and what would that even be about before we get into maybe a fun or goofy fact about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I do spiritual readings occasionally for people. It's not something that I push out there. It really is more, I'm very much about flow and synchronicities. And especially with you, it's been that way with us from the very beginning. And it was like that. It was, you needed a reading and it just flowed in the right direction for me to help you in that moment, to help give you the advice that you need. But it's a oracle reading, and I can't say it's like a standard reading. It's different every time. I spend some time right before just meditating and calling in my spiritual guides, but also yours as well. And I gain insight into what we're going to be talking about or the direction that they want. And so they'll tell me, for you, it was, hey, we're going to pull from 3 different decks, 3 cards. We're going to lay them out this way. They were very specific. So, okay, you guys, you run the show. I'm just here as the vessel to communicate.
Well, and I'm smiling at the description. We are going to move to a fun and goofy fact, but a fun and goofy fact about me is clearly my guides know me because they know I like order and things very organized. So it's, oh, you're going to do these 3 decks in this specific way because her mind needs specifics. So I love it. Thank you for that explanation. So be something, believe me, like even the Let's Get Spiritual and us already dancing is goofy enough, but what would be something fun or goofy that you'd want listeners to know that they might not know about you from the interview?
You mentioned this in the bio briefly, that I'm a Doctor Who fan, but I don't think people know like how hardcore of a Doctor Who fan I really am. I watch it all the time. I can like literally quote it if I wanted to. And what's really exciting, actually, geeking out moment, but next year, another side gig, another side hobby for this Aquarius is I'm going to be starting to do like the whole tour director thing with a company called Mysterious Adventure Tours. And next year, they're doing a Doctor Who themed tour in England and Wales. So it'll be like a 10-day tour. We're going to go to all of the main sites for filming for Doctor Who, some iconic places. And it's all in celebration of this year, it's the 60th anniversary. So it's like riding on that wave of this coming off of the 60th anniversary. So, anyways, basically, I'm just a huge nerd, is what it comes out to.
And I would maybe edit that by saying a huge creative nerd, because we go through your story that there's creativity weaved through this whole thing. So before we get literally spiritual, what made you say yes to this invitation?
Yeah, I think when you're reading your main mission and your main point of this podcast, it's the heart of things and the connection between people. And that is so important to me. And as we'll talk more later on, I'm very much about connecting with people and learning how they work, how they think, how they function, how they feel, how I can relate to that. How can I learn from that, like from that person, from their experience that they're taking time to share with me, to get personal. And so I'm very passionate about HeartWings and what its goals are and what it's doing. And I learned a lot about it from being your web designer. So I got to really dive deep and learn. And so I had to say yes, of course.
Awesome. Totally awesome. So we're going to get spiritual by bringing your amazing story to life so people can be inspired to live their passion and their soul's purpose. So I want to start off with, what type of things was happening before the 2018 incident that helped you know that you were able to connect with something beyond your physical experience? What was happening before we get into, we're going to talk about 2018 and why that was a big year, but there were some things leading up to that you were starting to notice.
Yeah, I've definitely been growing up. I grew up in my household. My father was Catholic. My mother was a Southern Baptist. So it was a very interesting dynamic growing up. But so I grew up in the church, needless to say. So I've always been spiritual to some degree. But as you get older, I went to college, started to think for myself, and you start to come up with your own opinions and things like that. So out of college, I got to this point where I definitely believed in spirit. I believed in a universe. So basically a higher being I definitely believed in, but I just wasn't exactly sure specifically what that was for myself. And I wasn't actively seeking that out really out of college. I was just living life out of college, starting the 9 to 5. I had moved to Nashville, working at a record label, living the dream. It felt, and so it really wasn't a focus in my life. But in early 2018, I started to notice number sequencing. So 1111, 222, 1234, or 2020, like even double numbers, but definitely a lot of the 1111. And that was happening for a couple of months. And I'd always heard from my mom, like, oh, that's your angels talking to you. Or, yeah, it's like the universe is trying to talk to you, trying to tell you something. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. So I was definitely recognizing it and paying attention to it for sure.
Absolutely. And I can relate because that's been happening to me, gosh, since January. And I wanted to say to listeners, I'm sure it was like this for you as well, that it's not as if you're like waiting for the clock to turn and it's 4:44. It's literally happened to look at your watch, look somewhere, and you see these numbers randomly and they just keep showing up. And I liked our discussion the other day, and you can tell me what rings true for you. You can really get in on a wild goose chase if you do Google it, because 444, for example, or in your case, 1111 can mean a lot of things. But I think what's most important, and you'll talk about this as we go through the podcast, is that you're listening to your inner guidance about what's going on. Because one of the things you and I talked about this weekend was sometimes it's the numbers coming up that mean a certain thing that resonates with you. Sometimes it's just literally your angels or your guides trying to get your attention and saying, hey, you need to pay attention. You're too far out there. So
and what way
that resonates?
Yeah. And what better way to get your attention, where it's like every time There's been times where, and I'm sure for some of you listening, like you're in the car and you look at the clock and it's 11:11. You're like, okay, that's cool. Look away. You're driving, not even looking at the clock, and then suddenly you look again, and then it's 12:12 or like 2:22 or something. And it keeps happening all day long. So it's okay, that's very uncommon. What are the odds? So yeah, it's very much there. Yes, you can Google and you can find so many different explanations for it. It's like some people say those numbers refer to a specific angel, which could be. Yeah, it could be your guides are trying to get your attention and hammer it down. This is the only way they're going to pay attention is if I just keep flashing this number in their face. Or it's literally that you are in sync. You are in flow, in the right flow that you're supposed to be for your soul's purpose, right? Like the path that you're supposed to be going. And that's just kind of confirmation from the universe saying, yes, you're in flow. You're good. Keep at it. Keep going in that direction.
I love that, because what you told me the other day when you were talking about the numbers, and I'll just close with this, is that pay attention to what you're thinking also when you
Yes.
see a number, because it could
Yes.
be that they're saying it's more of that, or perhaps they're trying to shift your thoughts depending on what vibration you're. So I loved that piece of advice for me to be more conscious about it. So that sounds like the beginning of your journey, which I can totally relate to. There are numbers all the time in different sequences that I run across. So let's take listeners into 2018. So 2018 was a big year for you. Can you tell us a little bit about that part of your journey and what happened, why that was such a big year for you?
Yeah, it was definitely that turning point year. I feel like a lot of us probably have that at least once, if not multiple times in our lifetimes, but at least once in your life, there is that kind of crossroads moment, pivotal moment in our lives, or something drastic does happen that just shakes things up, right? A lot of people, so we're going to go back to astrology here. For a lot of people, that's their Saturn return phase, which means Saturn is returning to the exact position in your chart that it was when you were born. So usually this is like around the ages of 27 to 33, kind of, it just really depends, but between that age range. And so my Saturn return is in 2019, which again, we'll get into because it definitely makes sense for that trajectory for me. But so yeah, it was definitely a turning point in my life. So I was living in Nashville, as I said, and was working at a record label. I was working for Provident Music Group, which is a Christian record label under Sony Music. And yeah, I was pretty content living there. There were some things going on with the current relationship that I was in that wasn't really great. But other than that, I felt like life was going pretty well and things were going well with work and family and things like that. But yeah, these numbers kept coming up for the beginning of the year. June hit, and at the time I was going to a gym it was like a boutique gym that was probably 20 minutes from my place. And how I even got started there, this goes back to creativity. The owner of the gym had reached out to me via a friend, and he was needing some photography for his gym. So he needed photography and videos and help with some marketing stuff. And so we ended up doing a trade, which I love doing because again, I get to do really cool things that I never normally would. And so he said, hey, I'll train you. I'll train you for free. And in return, you can just do like photos for us occasionally or videos or put together some stuff like update our website, things like that. So it was great. I met Joel, Joel Pavla, who was the owner of the gym. And from September of 2017 until June 2018, I trained with him. And he was great. He was so awesome. He was definitely a light in this world. And I don't mean to be generic with that, but he really genuinely was. And everybody that met him, they just felt this radiation from him of just such love. And he was so passionate for life. One cool thing for him is for his birthday, he didn't want any gifts. He actually gave gifts to his family. That was his way of celebrating because that's what brought him joy in his life, is being able to do that. Just little things like that, those unique mindsets in the world he had. And he was so encouraging training wise as well. I was not one to really work out. And so he was just always very encouraging, and he would tweak it a little bit to my interests. So he would be like, he knew that I love X-Men, for example. So he was like, okay, we're in the danger room. All right. We're training. And so he paint this picture. I was like, yeah, okay, we're going to go fight and all this stuff. So he always would just make it really fun and dorky. Or we would always talk about shows that we were watching the night before and getting excited for the movies coming out. So we had a lot of fun. So June of 2018, one morning I woke up and I went to the gym very early. To this day, I don't know how I even did it, but I would go to the gym and take his morning class on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 6 to 7. And then I'd drive back home, eat breakfast, and go to work, kind of a thing. So I woke up this one morning and I remember feeling in my gut, don't go to the gym. I just felt this in the pit of my stomach, but I just took it as, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't want to work out. Come on, Kayla, get up. You got to go. You got to get moving. Joel's going to text you. He's going to be like, where were you? And be on my case about it. So, okay, I got to go. So this morning I go to the gym, and in my class on these days, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, it's just me and two other women and Joel. So there's another class right before, and it was another trainer. And then I think it was like 4 or 5 men, just like middle-aged men. I don't know if that was like the point of the class or it just happened to be the demographic, but they were always there an hour before. So it's like, as we were coming in, they were always finishing up. So this Monday, it ended up then just being me and 2 other women and Joel, and then the other trainer who was in the office. So we had just finished our whole workout and it was getting close to 7 a.m. And I was starting to look at the clock and I was like, oh crap, I got to get up. I got to start moving. And I was exhausted, of course. We just did like a full hour of working out and we were all talking about plans that we had for the week and stuff. And as I'm like starting to adjust myself from stretching, I see a man that walks in through the front door. And he looked really nicely dressed. He had like a polo on and khaki shorts. And he seemed like he was clean and groomed and everything. And he walked towards us, and Joel's back was to him, but he was walking towards us. And I noticed the woman next to me, she started to tense up, but I recognize that now, but at the time it didn't fully register. And then when Joel turned around, because he heard someone behind him, he said, no. And this guy took a hatchet and a knife and struck Joel in front of us. And for me, it's interesting when you're in those moments what your brain does to try to help you deal with what you're actually witnessing. My first reaction was, this is just a very terrible prank that I'm going to end up hitting Joel for later. This has to be a joke. There's just no way that I'm literally watching someone taking a hatchet to a friend of mine. But no, I saw blood and he kept striking him and everyone started freaking out. And then it was like suddenly my body was like survival mode and triggered. I was like, oh my gosh. So we grabbed each other and we ran to the back room, yelling for the other trainer to get out there and to help Joel as he's trying to defend himself from this guy. So we shut the door and I just end up barricading this door. I was like, I'm going to stand here as long as I can and with all of my strength and hold this door. Nobody's getting through this door. I was bound and determined. And so we were staying in there huddled up and just talking to each other, obviously freaking out. And the 2 women knew who this man was. He was a former trainer at the gym. It was like a year prior. He had been a trainer there and he was starting to steal clients from Joel. From my understanding of the situation, I wasn't there at the time, but that's just what they communicated to me. So Joel had to end up firing him for basically trying to poach his clients. And this guy it was like a series of events for him, just having a lot of psychotic breaks. And clearly this is the result of that. So yeah, we were barricaded in this room and I literally did have what they always show in movies of like where your life flashes before your eyes thing, literally just sitting there and thinking, okay, I've done this. And yeah, I've done this with okay, I at least have had a really good life. From what I've had up to this point, I've been really blessed and it's been good. So coming to that realization, even to this day, thinking about that's like where I went, it was like, I was like coming to that place of, I was preparing for it almost. It's really crazy to think about sometimes. But anyways, we heard a knock on the door, like a frantic knock, but a knock on the door. And we heard that it was Bobby, the other trainer, letting us know that the guy was gone. Please come out and help. So we come out. And then that's really when the realization really hit me, was when I walked out, because I saw Joel face down in a huge puddle of blood. And we all just freaked out, of course. And then I totally snapped into survival mode again. One of the women that was with us, I believe, is a professor or was a professor at Vanderbilt. And so we did know that she did have medical training, and we'd call her Doc. And that's what I said, Doc, just you go, tell us exactly what to do. You are in charge here. You take the lead, tell us what we need to do. So we ran over frantically. And the first instruction was to flip Joel over, because obviously he was face down in his own blood. We didn't want him to suffocate. So we flipped him over. And as she was checking him for different cuts and stuff and kind of seeing where things were, I noticed that I think it was his left hand. It was basically severed. It was just like hanging on by a thread, basically. And so we then got one of the resistant bands and we tied that off on his arm to just stop the bleeding with what we could. And I have to laugh about this now. And I think that Joel laughs at it too when I talk about it, because I just remember holding that band and I was holding it as tight as I could to hold that. And I was like, dang you, Joel, for making me do all those arm exercises earlier, because it's like really trying to hold the strength there with that. So they were just checking him over and things like that. And now looking back on it, you could really tell his eyes were completely glazed over. He was breathing, but he just wasn't there. But even in those moments, I was talking to him. The others were, I can't remember what they were saying, but I know that they were talking to him too. And that was the whole point. It's, you're not alone. We love you. We're here for you. We're taking care of you. Just really letting him know that he wasn't alone in this really scary moment of his life, and that his friends were there with him. And so, then the ambulance came, got him. And then an hour later, we found out that he unfortunately did not make it. So he did end up passing away. And the guy, his name was Dominic, or is Dominic. And he obviously got away for a few days, and then they finally ended up catching him. But he had a whole plan of doing all kinds of things, of murdering other people and just going wild, basically. So very fortunate that they were able to find him early and catch him. And he was injured. Joel did end up injuring him, which I was like, props to you, Joel, for getting him. So I think that's also what slowed him down, was because he was injured. So that was obviously a very intense, traumatic moment in my life, that literally everything just changed in my life from that point. It was like nothing really mattered anymore, other than just trying to figure out why this happened, right? Which I think that's anybody in a traumatic situation, that's where you start. Why did this happen? Why did it happen to so-and-so? If it's someone you lost, or if it happened to you personally, like, why was it me? So the whys, that really began that whole phase of right after for me in 2018. Hey there. I know this conversation is super interesting, but let's take a quick break. Here's a special message from our awesome sponsor. Experience pure magic and rejuvenation with Wicked Obscura, a women-owned apothecary and candle shop in Covington, Kentucky. As one of the owners of this company, I can assure you that we believe in the power of nature and spiritual well-being, which we infuse in every handmade item that we offer. Our candle selection, made of coconut soy and infused with herbs and crystals, give off an unforgettable scent while promoting a peaceful atmosphere. With wood wicks and 100% safe ingredients, our candles provide a touch of magic in every home. Don't miss out on this special offer. Use code CreativelyWicked at checkout to snag 15% off your next purchase and experience the true essence and light of Wicked Obscura. Start shopping now at wickedobscura.com. Use code CreativelyWicked at checkout to snag that 15% off.
First of all, before we move on, I'm just going to have us both take a really nice deep breath, because I just think it's a good time for us to just take a belly breath. And the mission of Heart-Centered Space is to talk about transformative parts of our stories. And of course, vulnerability plays into that. And I think I want to, before I go on to a couple of the questions I have, there's a couple of things. One is just to finish off about Dominic. I believe in our pre-interview, we talked about that you reflected, because I guess there was a part where he tried to get a rifle, but he was on the list that he could not get it.
Yeah. So I'm trying to remember when I found that out. It could have been one of the instances when he was in court that came out. I can't really remember, but we did find out that a week prior, he had tried to get a gun. But when they did like the check on him, he was flagged because a month prior, there was some situation where he like tried to storm the White House or something, just crazy stuff. And yeah, that was another thing that hit home to me, where I was like, this just could have taken such a darker turn. It was already completely dark, but to even add to that, gosh, what if he would have had a gun? Would any of us have been alive? Would any of us have survived? I have no idea. I don't know. Would he just go in and shoot Joel and then leave? I don't know. I would like to guess maybe not, if he had all these other plans of taking out other people, but I don't know. But yeah, that was something else that just really weighed on me too for a while. Was like, man, that could have been 10 times worse. It could have been more lives lost. So thank goodness, thankful to our system actually working in this instance when it comes to gun safety, because I know that's a huge struggle that we have in our country right now. But at least in this instance, I can say it did work out well for us to at least have us survive, at least regarding from gun violence.
Absolutely. Thanks for highlighting that. Before we go into the healing part, which we're going to talk a lot about in the second half of the podcast, can you talk to us about what your life was like after witnessing the murder and the fears and things that came up before you really started to deeply, during your 2019 Saturn return, which is when we'll get into the healing part? What was it like for you? What was going on? What were you thinking and feeling in the weeks and months after the murder?
Yeah, just constant fear, because the gym was a safe space. And that's like when you think in the past of schools, or the people going to a movie, right? Those are supposed to be safe spaces for you, and that was the gym for me. So it's like, once that became an unsafe space for me traumatically, then it was like nowhere was safe. So I would go, it'd be anywhere, and I'd be checking where exits were, and I'd be looking and checking out people, observing them deeply, seeing if there was any kind of red flag that would pop up to where I then needed to like suddenly be in survival mode again. I was just in survival mode for so long. And honestly, I would say within the past year, I would say probably last year was when I really started to majorly come off of survival mode. Survival mode really, it's trauma, and it's different for everybody, of course, but it takes a long time. At least for me, it took a long time to even get out of that mode. And it evolves and shows up in different ways. And there's still things that I'm still working on to this day from it because of all of that. But yeah, so then it was just straight up fear-based all the time, especially when Dominic was not caught yet. Oh my gosh, that was just ultimate fear, because it was like, I didn't know the guy, but maybe he knew me. He had been staking out the place and watching. Who's to say? I had no idea what this guy knew. So I was just panicking. Oh my gosh, was he going to come back and finish the job or something? I don't know. I was a witness. So I had no idea. Your brain goes crazy with thoughts. So yeah, I dealt with that for a really long time, or just going to the grocery store and coming out, going to the parking lot, going to your car and just checking everywhere. As soon as you hop in the car, just locking, and just constant paranoia going on. Yeah, that lasted for a while.
Yeah, and we're going to go into the healing part of your journey. But one of the things before I ask the next series of questions, as we spoke the other day when we were talking about this whole story, I wanted to make sure that I honored where you were in your journey. And I just really want listeners to hear, because both of us have shared all of these different experiences that we've had, including some big trauma, and how important it is to transform that trauma, turning your pain into power. How can you work with it? How can you heal from it? As you said earlier, which I love, what is it trying to teach me? Why me? And it shook you into this whole other vibration.
Yeah.
So one of the things you mentioned in the questions I sent is that being creative helped you with your healing process, and that you wanted to create things out of love rather than the hate you witnessed. And I'm going to say that again. You decided you wanted to, from this experience, after watching somebody be murdered, create things out of love rather than the hate you witnessed. So talk to me about your creative endeavors you began during this time and how that helped you begin your healing process.
Yeah, first things first is after all of that happened, I was by myself in Nashville. So the first thing on my list was to get back home to my family. My family's from Cincinnati, Ohio, around that area. And so I was actively looking for a job just to get me back into Cincinnati so I could just be with my friends and family to heal, because I just didn't want to be in Nashville anymore. And of course, again, I was by myself, which I was very fortunate that year. A lot of my friends kept coming down to Nashville on the weekends to spend with me. My mom would do the same. She would come down various weekends to spend time with me. So it really, I wasn't alone, but that can only last for so long, people visiting you. So I was fortunate enough to get a job back in Cincinnati in October of that year. So then I was able to move back home. And yeah, that for one of the ways that really helped me was even the day of talking about it. And I forced myself to just talk about it to who would listen, just so I could get it out, because it was instinctively and intuitively, I just knew I needed to get that out, and I just needed to say it and verbalize it and just get it out to the open, rather than letting that just sit in me and fester and dwell on that. So that really helped. So I continued to do that when friends would come in or family come in, just to talk through things or fear-based things that I would have, or like paranoias that I would have and stuff, expressing that to them, which honestly was very uncommon for me because I am an Aquarius sun. And it's not the easiest thing for Aquariuses to be expressive with their emotions, but it was like my Scorpio moon took over, man. It was like, no, I'm the one for the job here. Let me help this. I can take care of it. And it did. It really did. So yeah, so I moved back home to Cincinnati. And one of the things that brings me joy in life is being creative. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is being creative in any kind of way. It could be painting, photography, just any way that I can create something. And I knew that was something that I needed to do to work through this rough energy that I had, that I was carrying, this traumatic energy. So one of the things I picked up doing was making candles. And it started with a research process. I absolutely love candles, but I also have a very sensitive nose. So I'm very picky about the kind of candles that I choose. And so when I was researching to make my own candles, I was doing that. I was like, okay, I want soy wax or coconut soy wax. I want a clean burn, but I want the atmosphere because I love reading and I love lighting that candle and giving that ambiance as you're sitting there in your little nook reading. So it's like, I like the wood wick, that gives that kind of a vibe. And then that kind of evolved into, I was starting to dive into crystal healing. I was really fascinated by it. It just started creeping up, which I think was more divine intervention coming in and saying, hey, why don't you check this out? See what you think here. But I was researching crystal healing, just different ways of healing. And then I started to think, oh, that would be really cool to put in my candles. And so it was just like a whole thing. It just became a whole thing of creating something for this candle. And so by creating, I was putting love and passion into creating something that was beautiful and that was full of light, right? And when I have just been in this really dark place for a while and experienced something so dark, it was like I wanted to shine a light into that and to show that there's still, it was almost like subconsciously I was like showing, look, but there's still love and there's still light here in this world, even when all of this terrible crap is happening, and all these things are happening to really amazing and incredible people, I still can hold on to love here and living in love, living in light, living in passion, just creating that and working with that. And it helped. It really helped just to be doing something. That's why you hear a lot of people who, when they're dealing with trauma, journaling is a way for some people to really just channel and just get that out. Painting, sketching, whatever it is, just work that energy, work it out, just work it out into something. It really does wonders.
I love listeners can't see you. I get to see you, but I love what you can't see, just for those that are listening, is her hands are moving everywhere, and you can really see how passionate she was about bringing light into this darkness. Picture her hands going right by her heart chakra and bringing up this light. And to know that always in life there is darkness and light, and it's where we choose to shine, and we bring that light after such a dark experience. So I love that. You also said that this journey led you to want to awaken your spiritual and intuitive side, and that you were done being scared, right? And so the candles and the crystals started that journey. But in 2019, you said you were ready to get on your Enrama, which in Celtic is for soul's journey. So you began working with a friend to help guide you on the journey. Talk to us about working with this friend and then what happened from there, because that was a pretty big shift.
Yeah. So definitely beginning of 2019, starting to delve into these little things of, learning about crystal healing. Learning about herbs, getting in touch and grounded with the earth. That was another thing. When you deal with trauma, your root chakra is an absolute mess. And of course, there's more chakras that are affected depending on the type of trauma that you experience, of course. For me, it was heavily the root chakra. I was just not grounded at all because I didn't feel secure. I didn't feel that security. And your root chakra is all about feeling grounded and secure, stable, rooted. And so I was starting to read about that and learn about that, learning about the chakras, and, I'm going to buy this red candle, and, I'm going to buy this incense to ground me. And then a few of my other friends were starting to learn more about these kinds of things and wanting to grow in their own way spiritually. They had other interests. That was what was really cool. We all had different interests. Like some were more focused on the Celtic, pagan faith, and were very interested learning about that. Others, it was angelic. Others, it was just their own thing. They were eclectic. They just wanted to figure it out for themselves. But we were all intrigued. And so we would go to a couple of spiritual energy expos and sit in on talks and stuff like that and just listen in. And I was really just I just felt the shift in me, and it was like, this is what I need to be doing. This is where I need to be going. And I want to know why I'm here, because I had this near-death experience and I survived it, and I feel like I'm supposed to be here. And so I want to know why that is. Why is it that I am important? Why is it that I survived something like that to be here? There's got to be a reason for it. And so I started to embark on the spiritual journey. So one of my best friends, she is a Scorpio. I'm surrounded by Scorpion energy. My mother is also a Scorpio. So apparently I need Scorpio energy in my life.
And we joked about this before, but even though I'm a Libra, I'm a Scorpio rising. So that's where we intersect.
Exactly. Yeah. See, Scorpio. Yeah. So my best friend, Kaylee, she had been with me, especially on the healing journey. She'd really been with me coming down to Nashville to see me, and coming over when I moved into my parents, and us learning about these spiritual things together, and just really being part of that journey for me. And so we got to a point where we started to practice meditation with each other, sometimes guiding each other. Sometimes we would just both go into the meditation together and see what happens. So in this one instance, a cousin of mine had recently passed away. He unfortunately took his own life. And so I wanted to do a meditation where I sent him light, basically. I just sent him light, sent him love, just letting him know that spiritually I was there. And I just wanted to give him that love and light and energetic support to help him get where he needs to go in the next life. And so we decided to do this meditation where she was the one that was going to basically hold my hand and kind of guide me on this journey. And I was just going to go under, basically. So we created this really crazy concoction of herbs, which we call it, it's like the gold mine in terms of this incense blend. We had a name for it. I can't think of it right now, but it was so good. It really just put you right where you needed to be in that element. Yeah, I was totally in a really fantastic state. And I was able to go on this journey that she helped walk me through. And I found my cousin. And so I did exactly what I planned. I sent him love and I sent him light. I just gave him a big hug, told him that I loved him. And it was like, that's what I needed to do. So I felt like I was done. And I was about ready to pull out of it. And then suddenly I felt being pulled in another direction. So again, this is all a meditation. So it's like, I'm almost in this like astral plane field almost, but I could feel energetically being pulled in another direction. It was like I wasn't ready to be pulled out yet. And the thing is, as I'm under, I'm also talking to Kaylee through this, and I'm telling her this verbally, like, I feel like I'm being pulled in another direction. So you should go, you should follow it. You should see where it takes you. So I go and I end up in this cabin. And I wish I could actually paint and draw. I can't, but I wish I could just because I can still see it to this day in my brain, like this cabin. It was like the room that I am in currently, empty cabin, wooden cabin. But right in front of me was this big window. And this light, the sun just shone right through this window. It was that beautiful, it was almost like that morning sun, right? That glorious morning sun just coming right in through that window. And it was like I could almost feel the heat from the sun. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of this room was a little boy. And he was just standing there. And at first I was like, that's weird. Who's this? Am I in his house? How did I show up here? And then as I got up closer, it was like my energy recognized him. I knew him. How did I know him? I know you. And then it all clicked. So we're going to pause here where we're at, because I'm in astral plane and time. This is what's really cool, or I think is really cool. Probably another reason why I love Doctor Who is understanding that time is not linear. So really understanding that's what makes the story really cool. For me, I think anyways. So we're going to pause there. So we're going to hop back in time to when I was 11 years old. And when I was 11, I was in Washington, D.C. I was there with my mother, and we were actually meeting up with her biological father. My mother was adopted, and we had started to build a relationship with her biological father, who lived in the Washington, D.C. area. So I am a huge history buff, and I loved all the museums there. So of course we went to pretty much all of them. And the one that was number one on my list was the Holocaust Museum, which may sound very strange, but I just heard, even at age 11, I had heard so many wonderful things about that museum. It really is known as one of the best ones in terms of preservation and just really communicating the story of what these people experienced during that time. And so I really wanted to go. I watched a lot of documentaries about it. So I was definitely prepared for what I was going to be seeing. And I knew there would be some graphic footage that was going to be hard. And I even told myself, you don't have to watch that stuff. You can just move on and see some other things. But I really wanted to go. So that was like our last stop on our leg of trekking along, was to go to this museum. So anyway, we go to the Holocaust Museum. Walking through the exhibit. It's a really fantastic museum if you've never been. And so you get to, basically there is a point in the museum. It's all telling a story. So it's all in timeline of how things took place in Nazi Germany. And so you get to the point in the museum where you actually have to cross through one of the transport carts that they would transport prisoners to these concentration camps. So you basically had to walk through one of these in order to get to the other side of the museum, which was all focused around the concentration camps. So my mom, she is one of those, she does not like to read plaques or anything like that. She just glances around like, oh, okay, and then moves along. I'm one of those, I have to read everything. So she was way ahead of me. She was already on the other side. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So I was excited to get over there to talk to her about some of the stuff I had seen. So as I'm walking through the cattle cart, I say cattle cart, but transit cart, I'm not sure the proper word there. As I'm walking through it, I actually stop. I remember stopping in the middle of this cart, and I look over to the left corner, and suddenly it's like I felt this intense presence, this intense feeling of ultimate fear. And like I was petrified feeling. I was even more scared. I felt even more scared in this moment than I did when I was in Nashville. That's how scared, that's how intense this feeling was. I felt all of that. And it was like I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was going, what was going to happen to me. I was absolutely petrified. That's what I felt in that moment. And it just came all at once. So it really freaked me out. It really freaked me out. And my Aquarius self was like, okay, reel it in. It's all right. Don't know what that was. That was really weird, but we're going to be fine. Just hold it in. We're just going to move along. I'm trying to talk myself through, even though this anxiety and all of these crazy fearful emotions are just like sitting here in the pit of my stomach. So I'm walking through now this concentration camp side. And there are barracks and everything. And then my mother calls me over to this area, and I go over there, and it's this marble display showing this process of prisoners being gassed in marble. And I just lost it. Like, I'm talking like at 11 years old, having a tantrum, lost my mind. I was just absolutely hysterical, and I could not stop. I was just freaking out. And this happened for a good 30 minutes. And my mom literally had to get me out of the main part of the museum to a little area to calm me down. And even to this day, she says that my eyes didn't look like my own, facial expressions. I was white as a ghost, all these things. I was just not myself. I was just completely out of character for myself. And it really freaked her out. It also freaked my biological grandfather out too. It's like, what's happening? After about 30 minutes, then that energy finally started to dissipate, move on. And I finally started to feel like myself again. But that really terrified me, so much so that I feel that I really built up a block for myself, because like a spiritual block, as well as I don't know what that was, but I don't want to feel that ever again. That's how terrifying it was for me. So then moving on to 2019, later in life, I'm struggling because I built this spiritual block. So I'm like trying to unblock it. And so that was also part of this journey with my best friend, Kaylee, that she was helping me with as well. We were trying different things to try to unblock that so I could be more open to experience. So now we're in this meditation. Here I am in this cabin, and here's this little boy. I recognize his energy. He's the energy that was at the Holocaust Museum. And I recognize that. I literally in my meditation, and I say this out loud to Kaylee. And it was such a surreal moment. And so I just remember hugging him, holding him so tight. And I could just tell how I could feel that feeling again, not me internally feel it, but it's almost like I could feel it off of him as I was holding him. And it was like I was registering that he was about to be gassed. That's where he was in his timeline. And so I just said, you know what? I'm here. Like, I'm here. I'm going to hold you. I'm going to hold you and hug you and give you so much love and so much light in this moment. It's going to be okay. You're not alone, and I love you. And so I hold him for a few minutes through this. And it was like I felt this transition for him. So I had the recognition. I just helped him cross over. And I didn't even think that was part of my repertoire of anything that I could do. But it was so surreal. It was so emotionally, it was a lot. Because of course, when you're mentally knowing that somebody is going through that, obviously, I lost it again. I was just a complete mess coming out of that meditation. Kaylee had to sit with me for a while and just really calm me down, because it was just, absolutely heartbreaking, but also, I don't know the right words to say other than I just felt very honored that that it was like he chose me to be there to help him through that. And that I was able to help cross him over and get him to where he needed to go in the light of things. So that I was able to give him some love and life in such a terrible, dark moment. And it was like, even from that point, I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do for people, is share that light, share that love, help people transmute that dark and negative and heavy energy if I can in any way. Obviously, I'm not a miracle worker here, but if there's anything that I could do to contribute to the universe to help people with that, I want to be that support for people.
Oh, another time to pause for a second. And from a linear perspective, I suppose this is part of my gift. I just want to kind of see if this is accurate for you, and also just to summarize for our listeners. Here you are, an 11-year-old in the Holocaust Museum, having this experience that you're not really sure what in the heck is going on, but you're feeling something that's outside of yourself, but yet it felt so, this energy was so big, and you're terrified. And then you have, like you said, you cried, sobbing uncontrollably for 30 minutes. And then from there, at 11 years old, you have this spiritual block. You don't really know that it's a spiritual block, but there's something blocked. And then you travel, if you will, linearly to 2018, where you see your friend Joel be murdered. And if listeners remember, a little while ago, Kayla talked about that morning, I had this thing that told me not to go. And I didn't listen to it because you were balancing, like, yeah, sometimes the gym is really hard for me, right? But it was like a really strong feeling. So you have this 11-year-old experience. You get this intuitive hit the day that Joel is murdered. Then you go to your friend's house where the original intention is you're working with her, you guys are opening up, you're finding different pathways, you're tapping into your intuition. The original intention is to help bring light to your cousin who took their own life. And then all of a sudden, because of the openness and the light that you and your friends shared, here's this 9-year-old that you now realize was actually with you at 11 that you're helping cross over. Is that pretty accurate as far as tying it together?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. And what I want to know from here is, because we're going to talk about what you do today, but from that moment that you had this experience and you were able to share it with your best friend, how did your life change after that work with your friend? Like, where did your trajectory go after that experience?
Yeah, I just continued on the journey, right? It was like, so how can I help people? How can I make my contribution in this life as Kayla Spelling to the universe with all of the stuff going on, whether globally and also just personal with everybody? How can I help? That's where I was introduced to Reiki. For me, having my own Reiki experience and feeling that shift in my own energy and it was very natural for me to work with energy. Like, I was always very drawn to that anyways. And so then once I took a class with it and I really started to figure out, oh my gosh, I get it. Like, it was just natural. It was like, that was one of those gifts that I was totally incarnated here for. That was like it awakened. And I was like, oh, hello, old friend. So yeah. And then it was like, once I started to really open up, it was like, okay, now I'm going to start listening to this inner intuition more. What is this? What is this? Oh, this is my soul. What is my soul saying? What is my soul singing? What is coming from here, from my heart center? And then it was tapping into working with the angelic realms, is the best way to put it, with touching base and learning how to talk to my own guides and finding out I can also work with angelic energy. And I incorporate that in my Reiki as well. So when I work with a client and I'm doing some Reiki on them, I call upon specific angels to help me with specific kind of energetic healing. Guess what? It's that time again. Time to pause for a moment and listen to a special message from one of our incredible sponsors. Divinely selected places have secrets and mysteries within them that cannot be explained, manifesting as hauntings, spectral entities, and supernatural energies, and are all found around the world in the most obscure corners. Unveil the best kept secrets of the world with Mysterious Adventures Tours, Immerse yourself in the mystical explorations of curated travel experiences, handpicked by passionate ambassadors and guides. Brace yourself for an unforgettable journey that promises to carve out memories like no other. Satisfy your wanderlust by visiting mysteriousAdventurestours.com to learn more about their future tours. It's time to tour the mystery and embark on an enigmatic odyssey that will leave you spellbound.
Awesome. So you just really kept going, and
Yeah.
it's ironic how you can have a spiritual block, have a very traumatic experience that was dark, bring light to that, and then all of a sudden the block is gone and you're wide open, and you're not only bringing more light to yourself, because that's first and foremost, but you're bringing light into the world. And I must say, lots of humor, fun, and play and creativity. So that's where we're going next. So talk to the listeners about Mind Junk Creative and the work that you do now. So you do visual storytelling through a podcast that you're going to start, design, you have a YouTube channel, you're a photographer. So why are you so passionate about what you do? Tell us what you do and why you do it.
I have to laugh because it's just such an Aquarius thing. Like, seriously, if you guys aren't into astrology, you listeners out there, just read about an Aquarius and you're like, wow, this girl's textbook. It's like, she does this and this. It's like Aquarius with all of her freaking projects. So I just have to laugh at it. Yeah, I went to school, I went to college and totally dove into the whole advertising track and web design. So being creative has just always been a part of me. That's another one of my talents that I have been incarnated with here. And it's so important for me, or it's become so important for me. I call it visual storytelling. And with Mind Junk Creative, it's my creative studio, creative agency, creative production company, however you want to call it. But it's a company focused on telling the visual story of your brands, whatever that is. Visual storytelling is just so important to me. And when I say visual storytelling, that could be through video, photography, web design, a landing page, a social media graphic, whatever it is. Your brand has a story that it needs to tell. And that's where it comes back in and tying in HeartWings connection, right? Telling that story, connecting with that consumer or that person that's going to land on your website or watch that video. So what is it? What's the story that we want to tell here? And I like to emphasize, what is your story? And another thing too, with Mind Junk, I came up with Mind Junk a long time ago because I am an air sign. I have all of these ideas all jumbled into this brain. And for the longest time, I really thought it was a disadvantage. It was like a cluttered brain, which it can. You can totally take that. And that's what in meditation, they're like, hey, we got to clear the mind and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I got a junky mind. I know. I'm an air sign, as you are as well. Like, it can get junky up there. But I embraced that a lot, and especially in design, because I don't like throwing those old ideas away necessarily. And I don't want my clients to either. So ideas that my clients may think are silly, we're never going to do that, stupid. No, let's not throw that away yet. Let's bring that idea forward. Let's talk about it. Let's sit with it. If it doesn't work, if it's still something that's not really fitting, that's okay. Maybe, though, it may spark something else, another idea. And then we're on it. Then we're hopping over to here. And then suddenly here's a story that's completely unraveling. So I want to take your throwaways and use them to create these engaging stories and experiences for your brand. What's been really cool though, is I've just noticed, especially being on my spiritual path and also doing this, I'm attracting a lot of really unique and incredible clients. A lot of them in the spiritual field, which is really cool. Like I recently just did a website for a psychic medium. So that was fun. Just trying to tell their story and put that into a website. But the thing that has been really cool is noticing that all of these people, they're so passionate about what they do. And that is so inspiring, right? It's so fueling. And I've realized that is another one of my purposes here, is to help people basically ignite their passion through design. And because I truly feel that when you are living your passion or doing your passion, you're living your soul's purpose here. Because think about it. when you're doing something that you love, that you're passionate about, drawing, writing, whatever it may be, playing pickleball, I don't know, it could be anything. You feel it, right? It just radiates all over your body. It's like this fire in you, and it's exciting. And that's because that's who you are. That's what you're supposed to be doing. That's fueling you. And I want to help that. I want to help show that to the world and tell that story for you. That's really what my podcast is going to be about, is talking to a lot of former clients that I've had that have quit their whole 9-to-5 structure and are actively living their passion and making it their own. And I'm not saying that you need to quit your 9-to-5 at all, because no, like you need to work. That's fine. You need to pay the bills. I'm just talking about still doing your passion. So you can still work your 9-to-5 and then still play a game of pickleball, or you still go to that art class, whatever it is that you're passionate about.
Yeah. And I just want to repeat what you said about what's the story you want to tell, because my experience of working with you as my web designer, it's not a gift of mine to be visual, and that's your primary gift. So it's like, I'm really good verbally articulating. I'm better at actually writing. So it's like, I saw my passion and my purpose on the planet come alive through your gift of visual storytelling. And I loved what you said about throwaways, because when you explained it to me, and when we were talking in the pre-interview, and even what you just said, if it's not that, it's like, it can be this. So you're really good at reframing or recycling something that it might not be quite this. And then also, when you came up with a visual idea, very flexible about how then it shows up for the client and adjusting to their needs so that their passion can really come through on the site. And I love what you said about igniting your passion, because that's exactly how I felt. You feel it's a little daunting to be like, as you said, because I am blessed to be not working a traditional 9-to-5 job. And whether it is that way or whether it's not, it's daunting to go, I'm putting my own unique signature out in the world. And is this really going to work? And you have to really believe in yourself. And part of doing that is creating the visual storytelling that you do to go, oh, yeah, it's really obvious what you're putting out in the world, and then really going with it. So I just wanted to honor the process that I went through with you.
Oh, thank you. It
was
amazing.
Well,
and that's the thing. Of course, if it comes across, it's going to be more authentic and real if it's you. And that's the whole point of the design and telling your story. We want it to feel like you, and for it to just feel authentic to you as well, and not just something that you're just slapping up there. It's like, we can make anything look really pretty, right? Like we can make anything look pretty and slick and flashy and jazz hands, like all of that. But if it's not you, it's not going to connect. Circle back.
Yeah. And I'm going to close with a couple of questions, but I also wanted to just reiterate what you just said, which is my passion came alive slowly but surely, noticing that as I got more comfortable with vulnerability, and that could look differently in different situations, how quickly that opened up other people. And so the idea came alive, and it's been in me for a long time. And it came alive during the creation of the website, because a lot of people are like, I know, but that's my story, but it's not a big deal. And my hope through us telling our stories, whether it's your podcast or mine, is that it really ignites something in someone to say, oh, well, somebody's been through a similar experience. Somebody's doing something similar to what I want to do. So that kind of leads to the last two questions. The first one is, how have these stories, everything about your story, the parts of it that we talked about today, how has it transformed you? How would you articulate how it's transformed you of who you are today?
Yeah, definitely just a refocus on my purpose in life. I may be a digital designer or visual storyteller, creative producer, however you want to label it. But my whole point here, I guess I have many side missions here on Earth, but it truly is to bring love and light into this world in some way, and to help ignite people's passions in the best way that I can. And for me, that's helping them create content for their projects, for their passion projects. That's how I do that. Of course, there are other ways people can ignite their passion fire, but that's how I can. And so, yeah, shifting that focus to be more about that rather than bringing in the money, which, yes, of course, is paying the bills. That's important. It's just a different perspective on life, and also living life to the fullest, of course, realizing it is very much the whole YOLO concept. You only live once, and having that near-death experience, really realizing I literally had that day where I thought that was it. That was the end. And so truly living each day as much as I can, really experiencing life and taking these chances. I moved to Belgium for love. And that was a big risk and a big step, but I did that and I'm living life, right? So that definitely has just transformed me in that way. And vulnerability. I've learned through this whole healing process of being more vulnerable, which is very hard, or was very hard for me. And yeah, through the help of my friends, my Scorpio friends, family members, they've really helped me over the years through this situation to become more vulnerable and more open, which then only makes me more receptive to things, to love and spirit and all that stuff.
You answered the second question, but I'm going to ask it again in case there's anything else that you want to put an exclamation point off before we close this. And I'll make sure that your website, your email, your LinkedIn, and any other handles are put in the transcript. But what do you hope listeners get out of you sharing this incredible story?
I know we talked about some pretty heavy things, but I actually really hope that people get excited and maybe even inspired by some of the things we were talking about, especially when it comes to talking about living your passion, because I just want that for people. And again, it doesn't have to be, you have to quit your job. I'm talking about a hobby, anything. Like, what is it that makes you truly happy, truly vibrant, that brings a big smile and laughter to yourself when you're actively doing it? I want that for everybody in this world. So I hope by talking through some of this stuff, and also by talking through some of this stuff, that people get excited and inspired to maybe look into some different things actively that they could try out, hobbies and things like that. Or if they have a project that they've been thinking about for a couple of years, and after hearing you and I talk, maybe I will start that passion project of that nonprofit or whatever it is. But also, with anyone who has dealt with trauma, just showing that there are ways of healing. And there's many different ways of healing. For an example, there is a organization in Covington, Kentucky called Thrive Empowerment. And they do healing through teaching women how to do martial arts. So it's self-defense stuff, helping women build strength and being able to feel like they can defend themselves and fight for themselves. They have specific pillars. I'm explaining this terribly, so hopefully they won't hate me for it. But they have specific pillars of healing and stuff like that. And they also do other workshops, embracing loving your body and things like that. And they were talking to me about working with a workshop to bring in like a spiritual element, because healing takes all kinds of different things, right? It's not just spiritual. There's all these different kinds of things that it takes with healing. So for anyone who's dealt with trauma, I hope that maybe some of this stuff has helped encourage you if you're in the healing process right now. And yeah, maybe there's some different avenues there that we talked about that maybe you could explore for yourself, and definitely wish you love and luck on your healing journey.
I love it. I would just summarize by saying, I heard you say also, bring light to the darkness, because that's the only way that the darkness, love and light to the darkness really transforms it.
Yeah, transmute
it. Transmute it. You want people to, through your visual storytelling, say, what's their story? Share your passion. It doesn't matter what it is, because igniting your passion brings everything up and out. And finally, to make sure that people understand that there's no throwaway ideas, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You allow this space of, no, let's play with that for a little while. And even if it's not that exact thing, we can figure out, recycle it, remake it, and make it yours. So follow your passion, make sure that you understand that there's only one you. And I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing such an inspiring story. One other thing that I really wanted to say really quickly is I hope that your openness around spirituality, right? Because spirituality means so many things to so many people. I know when I was at the beginning of my journey, I loved listening to other people, because it's, oh, I'm not the only one that kind of tried this, or I'm not the only one that thought that way. So just genuine gratitude that you were so open about the number of different ways and things that you tried in order to really start to trust your intuition. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on here and just talking about all this stuff. I love talking about spirituality, obviously, like theology, philosophy, you name it. I love talking about all this stuff. And yeah, like I said, I just hope that people get inspired and try different things with their healing, or even just try different things regarding a passion out there.
Definitely what I'll do is I'll recommend to close this out is that when you finish listening to Kayla, you have to put on the song Let's Get Physical and just start dancing
exactly.
it out. Right?
Yes.
That sound okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Kayla. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This podcast is brought to you by Mind Junk Creative, a creative agency that creates brands and experiences rooted in visual storytelling. By exploring your mind junk Creative is able to tap in and explore all of your wild ideas that you may have viewed as throwaways and use them to create engaging stories and experiences for your brands. What's your story? Go to mindjunkcreative.com and follow them on Instagram at It's Mind Junk. Thank you so much, you guys, for just sitting with me in this loving space and just kind of reliving that beautiful moment that I had with Tracey. I am truly blessed to have had that time with her on this planet. And so I just send so much love to her and the ether, wherever she is, and of course to her family and all of her friends who have also been feeling this loss. Again, Tracey, thank you for just being that incredible beacon of light that we have all needed in this world. And be sure to click the links in the episode description and show notes on our website at creativejunkpodcast.com to check out anything that's going on regarding this episode or other episodes in the past and what all of our amazing, incredible guests have been up to on Creative Junk. And if you haven't subscribed yet, well, what are you waiting for? Find me on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or any of your go-to platforms. Leave a review and please share it with your friends. I will seriously be forever grateful. Do you have any thoughts on today's episode or any must-hear stories that I should know about? Hit me up at hello@creativejunkpodcast.com. I really do love hearing from you all. Much love to you, and hey, catch you later, folks. Did you love this episode? Well, let's continue the chatter on Instagram and Facebook. We can dish about the latest interview and catch up on all things, well, creative. Plus, check out creativejunkpodcast.com for show notes and other juicy resources to satisfy your creative cravings. Don't miss out on the fun, and hey, thank you for listening.